welcome to the AG News Show. I'm your host, Roberto Alvarez-Galloso, serving you the best in interviews with Americana artists all over the world. Right now, I have the honor of having one of the greatest Americana singers. Her name is Sara Dee, and for me, it's a pleasure and honor having you, Sara.
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
For me, I don't know where to start because I spent all this time seeing your webpage, and it is out of this world.
Thank you.
Which leads me to two questions. You recorded a new album called Enjoy Volume 2. My question is, it's in three parts. The first part was, how did this project get started, and when will it be released to the world? And since you did Enjoy Volume 1, how do you compare Enjoy Volume 1 with Enjoy Volume 2?
Okay. How did I get started? It actually wasn't titled Volume 1 because I didn't know at that time that it would be a series. It's ultimately going to be a trilogy, so there will be a third. But I didn't know that at the time. After I released a first record, I did release a children's folk album. But even at the time of releasing that, I continued to songwrite, and so I was collecting up songs. I went for a hike in Malibu with some sort of new friends that I had known in the industry. I got talking with them, and it was kind of clear at that point that I'd be working with them, and so that's really how the new record got started. It still didn't have a title yet, but yeah, that's how it got started. And at that point, I definitely had developed kind of an evolved sound from the first record. So that's how it started. Then when it will be released, it'll be released on May 23rd, which is also actually the release date of Enjoy Volume 1, what's now Enjoy Volume 1, and happens to be my birthday. And since Enjoy Volume...
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Thank you. Early birthday, yes, thank you. How to compare the two. Enjoy was my first album, and I certainly had all of my musical influences up until that point. I had them as a point of reference, but I had never produced a record before. I didn't know anything about that process really from the inside, and so Enjoy Volume 2, I had an idea of how I wanted to approach it. I also had a different setup, so while I was still playing, I tend to play with jazz players, so there's a little bit of jazz influence, well, probably a lot of jazz influence in my music, although it's not necessarily jazz. But so I still continue to have that, but instead of playing with a violinist, which gave it more of a French feel, I would say, on maybe some songs on the first record, this one sounds much more like kind of street music. There's horns and still upright bass and drums, like jazz drums and stuff, but it's you've heard it, so it's this kind of, I would say that we've kind of cranked the grooves up a little bit. I wasn't necessarily trying to achieve anything in particular with Enjoy the original, except to like let each song find its own potential. And on Enjoy Volume 2, I was looking at each song in its own potential, but also as a part of a whole. And so there's, I would say, a stronger, perhaps, cohesion on the new album. So I think I answered your two questions.
You did talk about some of your idols. Who are your idols, and how did they influence you in your music?
Sure. Well, I'll start with when I was younger. I grew up on a steady diet of like Motown and rock and roll and jazz music. That's what my parents listened to. We always had music on in the house. So in terms of like traditional folk songwriters, or singer-songwriters, I really didn't get into that until in my 20s, after I had some influence in college. I was always playing instruments, though. I was always drawn to instruments as a kid, so I didn't necessarily think, I certainly wasn't a songwriter in my early days, and then once I got into high school, I was influenced by, I was into like Alanis Morissette, era, and Sheryl Crow and Jewel. Those were at least the female artists at that time, so I was influenced by them. But that was when I kind of I was songwriting personally, like to myself. I wasn't playing my songs for anyone or anything, and they were more like journal entries turned in with a melody and whatnot. And I was really just starting to think about it. I learned how to play guitar really from studying a Foo Fighters book. So I learned how to play like riffs there and everything, and then so I suppose that kind of all these are sort of influenced. But then really like when I was in my 20s was when I always thought of myself as a musician, but before a singer. And then before I went to college, I got offered a vocal scholarship, and that was when I formally studied voice for the first time. And then after that was when I started to become more known for my vocals as opposed to my and like my singing as opposed to my instrumentation. And so in my 20s was when I really started to look more into songwriting really as a craft. And then that's when I was introduced to like Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and Over the Rhine and Eileen Jewell, Leanne LaHavas, Lake Street Dive, Tom Waits. I love. So yeah. So those are that's kind of from when I was younger to now.
You already answered. Before I even asked the question, you already answered about how you got started as a singer-songwriter. You are an all-around singer. You at times remind me of Joni Mitchell. At times you reminded me of Juice Newton.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very kind.
And at the same time, you reminded me at times of Ella Fitzgerald. I even heard your. Of course, I'm 57. I'm almost an old man. Almost.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love old music, so those are all major compliments. Certainly, Ella.
I heard your album of Lullabies.
Oh yeah.
And I felt like I was a baby again. I loved it. And
thank you.
And what inspired you to record your single "Shake"? And also, what inspired you to record the Lullabies?
Sure. The Lullabies. So I got while I was on scholarship for voice, I actually was studying music therapy. So I graduated with that degree, and I've been a practicing music therapist for over 10 years. So I've worked with a lot of children. I specialize in like early childhood education and working with kids with special needs, and you're using music activities to develop other goals, speech and learning and whatnot. And so there's a lot of parents, and I worked with hundreds of families in South Bay and Los Angeles. And I would tell them I had shows, and they would come out to a show, and I ultimately got a lot of requests for you should make a kids record because I was playing lots of kids songs for the events that I was hosting. So once I put out my first record, I decided to do the Lullaby album, and my only, what would you call it, barometer, I guess, for that record was that I wanted it to be something that my friends would enjoy listening to also. I didn't want it to be too kiddie, so to speak, and so that's where the influence came for that album. I grew up listening to Raffi, and then I also just maybe 10 years ago heard about the Johnny Cash kids record, and it sounds just like a Johnny Cash album. It doesn't sound any different than his normal sound. It just happens to be lyrical content for children, and so that was kind of my barometer for that. I wanted to make that type of record for kids. And then Shake was very directly influenced by New Orleans. I had been told by a handful of people to go to New Orleans and that it would be a spot that I'd be really inspired by. And so when I had played a few shows in Austin, Texas after the release of Born Curious, the Lullaby album, I took a trip. While I was in Austin, I took a weekend trip to New Orleans for the first time, and I fell in love. I connected with the city on a very deep level, and the way that they celebrate life, and the way that art plays a role in their culture and music, and it really definitely lit a fire in me that I didn't realize had kind of gone out a little bit. And so, so it's a bit of a playful tune, but there's, the composition and the production of it all is definitely inspired by the street music out there.
Yeah, I had the honor of hearing some of your interpretation of some of the classic Christmas carols, which also, I'm not going to deny, it touched my heart. I have a very weak spot for Christmas carols, especially interpreted with talented singers like you.
Well, thank you.
What inspired you to record some of the Christmas carols?
I love Christmas music. I love Christmas. I love Christmas. I should say I love the season of Christmas. I've always wanted to make a Christmas record. One of the most influential Christmas records that I have heard is one called Snow Angels by a band called Over the Rhine. And it's just such a beautiful piece of work, and they have a real just a unique and powerful and poignant way of talking about the heavy side of the holidays, but in a beautiful way. And I was really impacted by that record because Christmas music can, while of course it's very cheery and there's totally a place for that, and I love that. The holidays, it's a record that always spoke to me because the holidays can be a very, very heavy time. They can come with like heavy emotions, and that was the first Christmas record that I heard that like really honored that space. And so that's what inspired me to start writing a few of my own original Christmas songs. And so I got 4 out. So I have 3 originals and then a couple covers.
Yeah, one of them was Christmas in California, which also caught my attention. How did you how did Christmas in California get started?
I was sitting on my bed and on possibly Christmas morning, if not maybe just the day before, and it felt like summer, and there wasn't anything in my environment that pointed to the fact that it was a holiday. And so
I'm in Florida.
And so I'm a very much, I'm definitely a mind over matter believer, and so I thought, I kind of just explored that in song, this idea that like Christmas is a state of mind. There's nothing out there that points to it, but if I look internally, I can start to tap into those, feelings. You can tap into the holidays if you want to, and then I wanted to make it cheeky and fun. I think sometimes songwriting comes from taking heavy or maybe serious material and putting it to a lighter tone. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah. If you ever have to do another Christmas album, please come.
Oh, thank you.
Because your Christmas album, I heard you sing the Christmas carols. I've heard Christmas carols from around the world, in Spain, Germany, Europe. Spain, my origins are Spain and Cuba, and Latin America. And I've also heard some of the artists that have been established, like recording in the 50s and 60s. I even heard some of the independent artists like you. And most of the times, independent artists like you, or Vanessa Peters from Texas, or Katie Laurel, they grab this Christmas and they give it the feel.
Thank you. Especially musically and with Christmas songs, traditionally, you kind of know what they sound like, you know what they sing about. So it's a special space to like be a part of it, just a little different, but still carrying on the heart of it. So thank you. I will definitely keep you posted.
Before I leave, I do ask you 2 favors. Please, when you do Enjoy Volume 3, let me know so I can be one of the first to promote it. And
thank you.
And let me know when you have a Christmas album, because I would gladly promote it. I would gladly buy it. I'm going to be listening to it this Christmas. Because
thank you, Roberto. That means so much. I will.
Because your Christmas album caught my heart.
That means a lot. I'm really glad.
I didn't do the Christmas album, but I heard some of the Christmas YouTube videos, and right. And let's just say it melted my heart.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
And I want to say that it was a pleasure and an honor having you here. I hope one day we could repeat this. I hope one day, if I could go to California, fine. But if you ever come to Florida, please come to Florida. We could do a live interview.
I would love that. I have an aunt in Florida, and she's been giving me a hard time for over a decade because I haven't made it out there yet. So I will definitely let you know. I got 2 people to go see. So
I'm here in the Miami area, but I'm like a stone throw away from Key Largo. So you could choose Homestead, Miami, Key Largo, or
oh yeah.
I'm all available, and I'm all ears to listen to great music from you. And
Wonderful,
I want to say happy birthday to you, and again, thanks. Sorry, I'm trying to find the words, but I'm like very emotional. I'm like, some of your songs really has touched the heart.
Well, thank you. I mean, you've found a lot of powerful words that have meant a lot to me. So we, a lot of times as musicians, one of the reasons I went with Kickstarter is so that I could connect with listeners more on a level that's beyond just them downloading my music. And this is exactly this is one of those things, because if somebody passed along my record and someone goes and downloads it, we don't always know. We don't get to know where our music lands, and what we don't know what space it takes up in people's lives until they tell us sometimes. So it means a lot that you're doing the work that you do. So thank you.
For us, it's a pleasure and an honor promoting great music from you. To all of my public here at the AG News Hour, it was a pleasure having Sara Dee, and please go to our website, Sara Dee Music, SARADEE Music, MUSIC.com, and buy her albums. You'll never regret it. Buy Enjoy Volume 1, Enjoy Volume 2, and buy it.